Western core meets Art Deco. Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a minute because I've had alterations on top of alterations on top of more alterations, and I'm making more pillows out of my friend's father's ties because she wants to use up all the ties in his collection, and she loved the first couple that I made for her so much. So I've been busy, but now I'm back into the groove of things and getting back to my garments. I've had this Vogue pattern V1933 since last year, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it. But earlier this year, I took a trip to Nashville, and one of the things that I got to do was go into the Country Music Museum, and I got a lot of inspiration from there. So I thought, I might pull a little bit from Johnny Cash, from Loretta Lynn, from Western Steer, from Cowboy Boots, and see what I can come up with. Let's get started. So I've got the fold lines in place for the center front on both sides. And here's what they look like. I'm ready to turn the front open edge over to the first fold line. And then I'm going to give it a good press. And the instructions in the pattern say to sew an invisible stitch along the raw edge. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to skip right over it. I think it should lay flat enough. Being a cotton, it shouldn't shift for me, and I should be okay. So now that I've got my basting stitch at the bottom and the top of the dress, which is just 4/8 seam allowance or 1/2 inch, I'm going to turn the self-facing to the outside along the remaining fold line. Measure off about 1 1/4 inch. And I'm going to mark that with my little piece of soap and make my stitch here. This will finish off and start the hem for the bottom of the dress. Now that I've got my stitch in place, I'm ready to trim it and then turn this corner inside out. And you don't want to trim through all your layers, just the top part of the facing to the edge of your fold. Now I can get a nice point on the corner with my loop turner here that's attached to, this is actually to clean my sewing machine, but they put a loop turner, at least that's what I use it for, on the edge of this as well. So that's really nice to have. Now that you can see that I've turned that inside out, I've got a nice point here, and it starts the hem for me on the inside. Now that I've got my collar stitched, both sides and the facing attached, I'm going to give it a trim all around the stitch edges and then understitch the facing as far as I possibly can. That'll help the collar to lay flat. Now I can pin the collar to the neckband and baste it around the raw edge, turn that inside out, and then give it a press. I jumped ahead and I stitched both sides of the neckband together. So instead of me taking it completely apart, I only took out the part where I'm inserting the collar. I slid that through, matching up my notches, and I'm going to pin that in place and stitch through all layers instead of following the pattern instructions, which was pin the collar to the neckband facing side down, baste, and then add the second piece on top. I just condensed everything into one. All right, y'all, I'm getting there. I gotta get this collar attached and, go back and finish up hemming the bottom. And then I can move on to the sleeves and the cuffs. Okay, so for the cuffs, I'm ready to turn in the seam allowance on this notched edge here. Give it a press and then trim that back to 3/8 of an inch. I've got the seam allowance turned over for the cuff, and I'm going to trim close to the stitch edge, turn that inside out, and then press the facing to one side to help it lay as flat, just like the collar. So I've got all the markings transferred from the pattern pieces, outlining the fold lines, the pleats at the bottom, and then that double flap fold that's going to be the hidden part for the buttons. So I'm at the point where I'm ready to attach the sleeve interfacing to reinforce the buttonholes on the side of the sleeves. And I'm going to place the interfacing, and I just have woven fusible interfacing here, on the insides of the outer fold lines closest to the edge. I'll fuse that in place and then press the remaining piece on top of that. All right, I've got both of the sleeves done, and here are the cuffs. I just need to trim off the seam allowance a little bit, turn it inside out, give it a press, and attach them. All right, I'm ready to put these buttonholes in, attach the sleeves, and wrap this up. I think I'm gonna go with probably 30. Since it's hidden, there's no need for it to be decorative because it's just going to be in the placket that closes the sleeves. And here is a little button in place. I have the guide centered, and I'm set to go. And I'm going to do this for 5 markings down the entire sleeve, and then 2 more on each cuff. That's basically the most work on this garment, is the buttonholes, in my opinion. So I can see why they marked it as average. So I dug these buttons up out of my stash, and these are just solid color value pack bags that you can get from Joann. And it's nice just to have black in your stash that range in different sizes in case you need to replace something for yourself or somebody else. I think I need, let's see, the pattern calls for 5 buttons for each of the sleeve, but then like 2 for the cuffs. I don't have quite enough to do all of them out of this matte finish, but what I can do is use the shiny ones for the sleeve and use the matte finish for the cuffs, since these will be hidden. And what I want to do on the front of the dress is, instead of adding buttons, I want to add these snaps and just make it look like it's a hidden snap or a hidden button placard underneath, but it's really not. Because I'll probably decorate the front with either charms or decorative buttons, and I just don't want any other type of ornament or distraction on them. So I'm gonna try this out, see what it looks like, and if not, if I don't like it, I can always go back and add my buttonholes later. Okay, I've got all the buttons in place, got all the buttonholes finished off, and now I can attach the cuff to the sleeve and then attach the entire sleeve to the dress. And if you're wondering how I'm going to attach these charms, I got these button pins that are 4 shank style buttons. They're basically a safety pin with a bump in them that hooks the back of the button. But in this case, it's going to hook the loop on the top part of the charm. So yes, I'm going to use those. Okay, so I've got the male side of the snaps down the entire front, and I'm using 8 just for reference. And these are just sew-on snaps by Dritz. They don't really give a size, but they look to be about 5/8, 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to say 3/4. So you have that just for reference. And on the side that's visible, I don't want the thread to show on the opposite side, but I'm going to carefully catch the outer layer underneath so that these lay flat. I've already got one in place at the very top, and you can see that you don't see it from the other side. And I'm just going to make my way down with the other 7. And then my dress is done. I'm going to use some of my pins that have the huge ball point on the end just to secure the snap in place so that it doesn't move around when I'm trying to sew it. And then my marking here is where I'll make my insertion point. There. Now it's secure, and when I make my stitches around, it won't move all over the place. So I plan on wearing this as both the A-line dress as is intended on the pattern, but I'm also thinking that it can be worn as a long tunic top as well over leggings or jeans. So I've got a lot of options with this dress slash top. I've taken different brooches out of my collection that I'm going to decorate the front with. And I really like the idea of leaving the buttons off. Plus it was less buttonholes for me to make, to be honest. That was really the most work on this, and I can see why it's marked average, was the buttonholes. But I do love how the drapiness and the long elongated sleeves on the dress kind of give it a cape type effect. So I really like that. I picked up these cool charms at the International Gem and Jewelry Show that I go to. It comes to Michigan about 3 times a year and travels all around the country. So if you get a chance to go to it, if it comes to your neighborhood, definitely check it out. You can find some really good deals on those tables. And these charms were just $1 a piece. But I kind of liked how they gave Schiaparelli kind of feel to it. I don't know if you're familiar with that designer, but for those of you that are, know that they usually go towards like gold dipped, bold, brassy type Art Deco charms to decorate their dresses, their shoes, their handbags, and jewelry. So I really like that effect. Well, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed today's content, please give me a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care. Bye, everyone.